all those rude audience folks. We've been in a lot of meetings today, and so we're a little stir crazy, I think. So that's just our excuse for being professionally inappropriate and beating the hammer down. But we are ready for our board meeting. Welcome to you all. And if we could have a roll call, please, to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Ballard?
Here.
Mr. Damachia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Sturgill?
Here.
Mr. Williams?
Here. This time we would have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Jay Kiefer's here. I think.
Nope, we have Miss Christine Miller. If you'd be so kind, he often gets you too confused, but I've got
That's what they gave me.
They should spend more time on meetings.
You know what, Jake?
There's no microphone.
It's us.
project.
Oh, it just, oh, okay.
Outside voice.
Outside voice?
Your Lyria voice.
I can use my teacher voice?
Yeah.
All right, tonight we have three students at Longfellow Middle School leading us in the pledge. So come on up, gentlemen. First we have Nathan Gomez. He's a 7th grader, son of David and Kara Gomez. Nathan enjoys basketball and swimming. He is on the Longfellow robotics team and is a member of the news crew at Longfellow. Wesley Zatt. He's an 8th grader. He's the son of Eric and Shelley Zatt. He has one brother, Kyle, who attends Lorain High School. Wesley is in the band and track at Longfellow Middle School. And finally, I have Nicholas Warden. He's an 8th grader, son of John and Stacy Warden. He has one sister, Nicole, who is a student at Lorain High School, and one brother, Nathan Parker. Nicholas is on the robotics team at Longfellow. After the pledge, the boys are here to speak on their experiences at Washington, D.C. and New York City trip, which they just got back 2 weeks ago. I'm the principal at Longfellow Middle School, and they are here to lead the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, we gotta give speeches. They said we have to give a speech? Okay, I'm going to sit down. You're on your own, guys.
Okay, great.
All right, great.
Okay, hi, I'm Nathan, and the DC New York trip was really fun. It was a really fun trip for me personally. It was also filled with education. Every place we went, I had a fun time at and also learned some things. And some examples of this were places like Mount Vernon in Virginia, which if you don't know is where George Washington was born. Me and other kids had fun walking around George Washington's plantation and house. We saw some sheep that she could pet and we fed them grass, which was really fun. We also saw George Washington's teeth, which was made up of ivory, human teeth, and cow teeth, which is really gross. And we also saw some famous landmarks, such as the White House, the Capitol, the Washington Monument, Times Square, Grand Central Terminal, and even the Empire State Building. It was really cool to see Times Square in person because it was so big. It was also really hard to breathe there because there were so many people. And also in Times Square, we saw where the ball drops on New Year's Eve, which is actually really small in person. And my favorite experience that I will remember forever is the view from the top of the Empire State Building. I've always loved heights, and being up there that high with the amazing view of the whole city was really cool. The DC New York City trip was a trip that I will never forget. I'm absolutely going back to DC and New York City again because of this trip.
Alright. The Washington, D.C. and New York City field trip was a great experience. It opened an opportunity to look into American history. We did everything from going 80 floors up 80 floors in less than a minute to rocking on a boat across the Hudson River. We got to see some places that we recognize from TV shows or movies. One example is Times Square. Another would be the White House. On this trip, we did many things, but to start, I will talk about the Empire State Building in New York City. At first, I was very nervous going up to the top, but once I got up to the top, the feeling went away. While I was up there, I noticed that the water in the toilets were shaking, and from outside it was really hard to open up the door because of all the wind that was blowing on it, because of how high we were. Secondly, I'm going to talk about going down the Hudson River. When we got on the boat, it was my second time being on a boat, and my first time seeing the Statue of Liberty, which are two things that I wanted to do because I've only been on one boat, which was last year for robotics. Next, I'm going to talk about Wall Street. On Wall Street, I heard a lot about Wall Street, but I never really knew much about it. But when we got there, there was a bull statue that was bronze. It represents aggressive financial optimism and prosperity. The bull weighed 7,100 pounds and has been standing since 1989. On Wall Street, there's also a statue of a little girl with her chin up, representing women leadership. We also visited Alexander Hamilton's grave, which was at the Trinity Church Cemetery. And overall, the trip was an amazing experience that I will never forget.
My experience at DC and the New York trip was, my favorite part about it was when we went to Fort McHenry and saw all the cannons and where the ships were docked and were bombing the fort. When we were there, we did a ceremony. We raised a 17-foot by 31-foot flag, and it took probably 15-20 minutes because there were many kids there also. After that, we took our long ride to New York. We got there and we went into the subways. It was really smelly down there. When we got off, we just started walking around. We got into Times Square. When we were done, we shot for a little bit. Many people were having fun buying a lot of things. And we saw a Broadway show called Miss Saigon. And after that, we went to our hotel, we woke up, and the boys, when we were done eating, we went and worked out for 30 minutes and left. When we were done, one of the days we saw the changing of the guard at Arlington Cemetery. We saw the eternal flame of JFK. We went to the Smithsonian American History Museum in DC. We saw the original flag that flew over Fort McHenry, which inspired Francis Scott Key to write the poem of our national anthem. After we went, our first stop was at Shanksville, where Flight 93 went down, and they have a boulder there. It's not really a boulder, it's like a rock. And we were there were not many people there, but after that we went driving. We saw the Pentagon building, plus the memorials, and the benches that face in to the Pentagon building were the people that died on the plane, and the benches that face away from the Pentagon are the people that died in the building. Our last stop was at the 9/11 memorial, and it was very silent there. It was hot, and the names that were across, if there was a flower in it, it was their birthday. And we saw all the American Constitution, the Bill of Rights, in one of the museums. And one of the funny parts was one of the kids on our ride, when we got to the museum where all the parts were, all the papers, documents, someone was still asleep and no one waked him, so he went for a bit bus ride, so he didn't get to see any of that. When we were in Maryland, I think, we went to a medieval dinner. We were the green team. We were a runner-up. It was really fun and loud. That's all.
Two things very quick. quickly. First, I think each student had a nice, long, extensive list of all the things that were the most memorable to each one. And there wasn't a lot of overlap, which shows they squeezed a lot of good stuff into a very short trip. And I appreciate also the fact that you didn't elaborate on Miss Saigon. So again,
I'm just glad they bought that lost kid back, you know?
what a phenomenal trip that must have been. Excellent. Thank you for coming and sharing.
By the way,
Nicholas, Wes, and Nathan. Thank you for presenting tonight. We
No
appreciate it.
doubt you represented us well. Okay, the downside is you have to picture Nick with us. Come on up. Come on
You
up.
have to go back and catch my.
Come on, guys.
Now, Mr. Smith, I have you know, I took 3 pictures last time, and 2 of them, your eyes were closed. So
Who does it on purpose?
Go to sleep. I'm old, man.
Here's your family.
He said, I don't make the rules.
Nathan, who's with you?
My mom,
Who is?
Kara Gomez, my dad, David Gomez, my grandma, Pat Akesi, and my grandpa, David Akesi.
Nice. Who'd you bring?
My mom, her name is Shelly Zapp.
How's your mom? What did you got?
I brought my dad and my sister, John Worden and Nicole Worden.
Now you're going to a dance, right?
No.
You guys going?
They're not going.
You're not going? You're going. All right, you guys don't leave. It's looking very boring.
We have a good formal. Hey, how'd you like the carnival?
at this time, we have a guest, but he stepped out, so we'll introduce him when he comes back in. We would entertain our first hearing of the public. If there's anyone who would like to address the board. I don't see anyone. No takers. All right. Moving on. I need a motion to approve or amend the signed minutes from the May 22nd meeting.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Is there any old business for discussion? This time I would move on to the report and recommendations of the treasurer, Mr. Hill.
Recommend for approval items 8.01 and 8.02.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hill. At this time, we would have a report and recommendations of the superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. I'd like the board to consider for approval 10.01 to 10.16 personnel matters.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Sorry about that. Turn that thing off.
Yes.
Right. I'd like the board to consider for approval 11.01 to 11.08 operations matters.
Support.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
I'd like the board to consider for approval 11.09 that I would like to amend to read, I'd like for the board to consider for approval a contract with Atlantic Research to provide an executive search for CEO and a cost not to exceed $25,000.
So moved. Support.
Discussion?
Who's paying for that?
The district will pay the money up front and will be reimbursed by the state.
Okay.
And again, that's for the new commission
I
to
understand.
execute their search for the CEO.
Yeah, wanted to make sure that the state would,
The state is assured they reimburse for up to $25,000.
And after we get this agenda, we're going to have some comments from Mr. Richardson. At that time, he'll be able to address this piece a little bit also, I think.
So just as a point of, this proper name is Atlantic Research Partners.
Partners, thank you.
Is that in the record?
Yes.
it is.
She's already typed into the new minutes, great. So again, this will be reimbursed to the district. And does this cost satisfy, or is there the potential that it could be any number of $1,000s over? I would hate to only have something approved for the 25 if...
Great point. So, can I speak?
Please, yes.
So Originally, the original price was 25 to 30,000. I was able to negotiate them down to 20, and there's a $5,000 kind of cushion for if there are candidates that need to fly in to interview or whatever. But we would definitely get those costs to you or to the state so that we are fully transparent of how those dollars were spent. But the actual contract with Atlantic will be 20,000. They agreed to that.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because again, we, you know, we appreciate that we're going to be reimbursed, but at the same time, we don't want to have the process delayed any longer because of the absence of funds, and then we have to come back and do this again and all that stuff. So,
And this
if
is why
your wisdom,
Dr. Graham recommended that you all take the front end and just get reimbursed as opposed to waiting for the state. So thank you for that.
so with that, any more discussion, gentlemen?
And you're only gonna reimburse us for 25,000, right?
Not to exceed.
Not to exceed. Roll call, please.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Is that it?
Thank you guys.
I guess under new business, so we have an item or a person. Most of you, I think everyone here knows, and they've actually been introduced to in some capacity, Mr. Tony Richardson, who is the appointed chair of the Academic Distress Commission. The state makes 3 appointments. There's an appointment made by the board through its chair and by the mayor. And of the state's 3 selections, they identify who the chair of that commission is. Upon the identification of that chair, that formally started the clock ticking on the 60-day CEO search process. And so we were very fortunate that one of the commission members that was appointed by the state was a graduate of this school district, is employed by one of our staunch supporters in terms of the North Family Foundation, and is an all-around, was a great athlete, exceptional student, and just really the characteristics of the things that educators and school districts would most like to see as a byproduct of their work. He really exemplifies that. In this new role, it's quite challenging because many of the folks who mentored him and taught him and contributed to him, he is now in a position where they're in a pure relationship, and in some regards, there's a subordinate relationship. He has embraced this with great humility, and but with an absolute sense of urgency and seriousness based on even his own experience growing up in this district, facing significant barriers, but being able to overcome those barriers, and is now leading a great family life. And also former Lorain City Councilman. So I would like to introduce to you all who you already know, Mr. Tony Richardson, and please come up and address the board and take some time to speak our views.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for the kind introduction. At first, I didn't know what you were talking about. I'm like, Jesus, it feels like time flies so fast, right? And you come in, and obviously, as a former student, I had a great experience here. And in fact, I tell everyone that, but for Lorain City Schools, I wouldn't be where I'm at. No way whatsoever. So just a little bit about my background. Grew up in the city here, right down the street here. I lived in the projects, and lived on the east side of the city as well, in Fillmore Circle, which at the time was one of the most tough parts of our community. I never met my father. My mom was really into kind of drugs and the streets, and had a tough upbringing. Spent some time homeless. Had to move from house to house. Lived with my aunts, lived with friends, and anywhere that I could essentially call or just kind of find food and have, you know, a roof over my head. So when I came to school, this is where I was able to get away from those things. I had amazing teachers who not just, they didn't make it easy for me, they challenged me. In fact, I had a 5th grade teacher, Mary Nowicki, who told me, you know, you're a good athlete, you like to win field day and all kickball and basketball, but, you know, are you willing to be the best math student? Are you willing to be the best science student? And that was a game changer. I still remember that I'm 34 years old, I was 11, when this woman said, be great at everything. And I really believe that my teachers and the supporters, my coaches, my mentors, really became my family and made a difference for me. And this is why when I was asked to step into this role, I didn't think twice about it, just because I feel like this is an opportunity for me to finally pay it for all the things that
people around here have done for me. And so as I come into this space as a chair of this commission, again, I wanted to continue to build upon the work of the past commission. I want to be transparent and open. I'm a straight shooter. I'm an honest person, and I will never say anything in private that I wouldn't say in public. And I'm a big fan of being of integrity and carrying out my professional responsibility. That said, I want to continue to kind of champion and lead in this kind of collaborative spirit. We want to listen, and in fact, I've been on these what I'm calling listening and learning tours. All right, I think sometimes when we get in positions of authority, or leverage, you can tell a person's character by how they approach the work, right? Do they come in and listen and learn and try to truly understand what's going on in the community, or do they come in with a hammer and think they know everything, right? And so I was always told to be aware of the person who thinks they know everything. And so my approach to work is to learn, listen, lean on the experts, lean on the people who really get it. I'm not an educator, and so my job is to really learn from the educators, learn from the professionals, and then ultimately make decisions in partnership with the district that moves our community, that really supports our kids and our families. So thanks again for the opportunity. Thanks again for the support. And I really, really want to partner and have open lines of communication throughout this entire process. Thank you.
Any other new business for discussion? Yes, so what I would like to do in this new business, because there was an item 8.02,
Yes.
which was approved, and if it's okay with the board, I would like to digress and talk about that a little bit. That was what we've been doing, and this is for the community, everyone to know. There are members, Jay Pickering, some folks who've been part of the Health Trust. We are assessing our health care package. Our health care is something vitally important to every family who has someone working in this district. And we know there are lots of challenges with the status of health care in our community, in our country, and escalating costs. And so Mark Ballard, actually we have two board members who have somewhat extensive background, or more background than the rest of us anyway, in insurance. And this has been something that we felt needed to be addressed, but quite honestly, never had we really kind of picked up the thing, grabbed the bull by the horns, and really start digging into it, for lots of reasons. And anyway, so recently we have begun to do that because we need to assess, is this the most efficient thing? Are there other opportunities? Are there savings that could be gained? And so we've begun this somewhat of an investigative process, and we've brought in some consultants, and we've gotten some information. We're trying to get information from the trust, and Josh has been very instrumental because you had to do this in the previous district you were in. So he brought some best practice and some expertise. Jim Smith, the board historian, you guys know that guy, would always offer some insight to the history.
I have hair.
They don't have this in the healthcare plan. This is not something you can just get. And then the addition of Mark Ballard, who has an understanding and knowledge of this, and I think was instrumental in working with the city of Lorain when you were on the administration there in reassessing the savings and some of the challenges with healthcare. And so all that come together, along with some of the current situations, and we find that our health trust is in a very compromised state. Escalating costs, did I say that? Did I understate that?
Yeah, kind of.
So, yeah, spiraling costs, benefits, people are sick, people need to be healthy, and that costs money. So we're really looking at that. And what's happening is our trust is in a state where they're about to run out of resources. So Dr. Graham and Josh can speak that more specifically. And I think this needs to be a public conversation because these are some of the difficult decisions we need to make. And how to best utilize the resources that we have available to us as stewards, and how to offer a quality of health care that is respectable and that is beneficial to our employees. And so sometimes as a board, we're always looking to save money, but we're also looking at is what's the best interest, the healthcare interest of our employees, and it's very important. And so how to navigate both of these pieces simultaneously. It's not always about the cheapest, but it's kind of trying to find the best, right? Trying to find what's affordable, what's efficient, and what people want. So these are some of the challenges we're having. And so, and I'm characterizing this, I think what we did is we received a resolution, a request from the Health Trust, and they wanted to borrow. What happens is there's about $60,000, I believe, in their.
It's about $1 million.
No, in their
Oh, and
pocket.
It's two different
Yes,
reserves.
Yes.
If we have enough, we probably don't have enough to pay off June. Yeah.
So,
Well, and there's more to that discussion too, because I called and had a discussion with Mary Tarasco, who handles the Health Trust, and it was my concern, when we had the Wednesday meeting with the Health Trust, there was a few different options, I think, to kind of get us through the immediate. One being a loan from a reserve runout that's in place per contract. Another option is to advance on monies that would be due to them later. And the other option, I speak to a third option, really that's more the long-term idea, is to explore cost-saving measures for the immediate future, as well as in the fiscal year 18 and beyond. So, but the conversation I had with her, because of course I started digging into the loan aspect of it, and initially it didn't sit well with me as to whether or not it made sense, not only from a compliance issue with state auditors, but even a legal issue, and just whether or not I can, if I'm able to even do that type of a loan. After speaking with the state auditors as well as our legal counsel, it wasn't the best approach. And then so the thought process was the advance, I didn't necessarily want it to cross over a fiscal year. So the loan, I think, gave us the functional ability prior to looking into it to handle the immediate future in June, because by all accounts we weren't going to make it through June, and by we I mean the Health Trust weren't going to make it through June. And so, you know, I got to think of it from a few different angles, and to advance it and have it cross over a fiscal year is kind of an audit nightmare within itself. So I had a discussion, long story short, I had a discussion with Mary Tarasco again today, and she said as they've looked through it, in the claims since, I guess she got some more claims information that have come in since, and it looks like the claims for this month are actually stabilizing. The final claims numbers that came in from May actually came in slightly under budget, so they won't have to pull from the reserve for that. And she's confident, based on where they're coming in, that we can get through June. So 8.02 was kind of what came out of that discussion with her, basically to say that they'd be okay for June, and then in July, if necessary, it's not even an automatic, but if necessary, 8.02 gives me the ability to advance on monies that would be due within this fiscal year anyway. This fiscal year meaning next fiscal year, fiscal year 18.
and by advance, what happens is when we would then make our contribution, it would be less the amount that we advanced.
Yeah, we give them more upfront money and then less spread.
I think it's important that, for those who do not know, this is a self-insured plan. Insurance is a product of risk transfer. When the Health Trust was set up, I think back in the 80s, it was decided that we would be self-insured. We do have something with Medical Mutual for really big claims. But the run-of-the-mill everyday claims are paid out of the trust fund. And this happened a number of years ago in the county when their plan went bust. And I think it's important that everyone covered under the Health Trust understand this. If the plan runs out of money and cannot pay claims already incurred, those costs are equally shared by all members of the trust. And that means every teacher, custodian, everybody in the trust would have to divvy up to pay their share of the unpaid claims. And I hope, and I've said this, Mr. Demakia, now do you remember when we attended that one? That was many years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah, we were both young. Well, he's still young, but
You were young?
yeah,
Not 10 years ago.
I really think that we owe it to our employees in this atmosphere of investigating to get a couple of quotes, at least, from an insurance company, and then transfer the risk, clear the trust out. And I think you're going to save money, and I'm only speaking for myself as a board member. If the board saved money and could give quality care insurance to our people for less money, I wouldn't object to using the money we have saved in other benefits for our employees. And one of those benefits that's very popular in the private sector is called a health savings account, HSA. It's an IRA for health care. You can set aside a percentage of your wages, pre-taxed. So Uncle Sam and Columbus are helping you pay for that. And you draw on that money for any losses you incur that are not insured. And that money rolls forward year to year to year. And when you get to Medicare age, which is 65 now, and you no longer feel you need the health trust, you can roll it over. And I said, Tony, I'm glad to see your head going, because you know. You can roll it over into a IRA and use it for retirement. And I think companies have found out that they can offer their employees better coverage and contribute at the same time. Say, dollar for dollar, you put in $2,000, the employer puts in $2,000, all at once that year you have $4,000 to cover uninsured losses. Anything that you can deduct on your income tax. Drugs, health, you know, and over time, you build up a reserve, and when you don't need it anymore because you're under Medicare, you've got money that can roll over, and now you've enhanced your retirement. So I think we should look at insurance options, but keep in mind that the money we're paying could be used in a better, possibly better circumstance for the very employees, because insurance is a very, you don't get to use it unless you get sick or hurt. So if you're healthy and you haven't had a claim for 5 years, you're paying exactly the same amount of money every month as somebody that's had $200,000 in claims. So why not use that money and keep it for yourself? So that's just something I think we should be looking at too.
So, let me just add to that a little bit. I mean, 8.02 is a very, very small Band-Aid. And to Mr. Smith's point, we've been talking about this for over 10 years, and we knew this day was coming. And when you look at the year-to-date account balance of this health trust, although I do respect Mary and her opinion because she's been doing it a very long time, you know, I just have some concerns. So what kind of timeline are we looking at? I mean, are we looking at getting some much better options with this and working with, you know, Mr. Pickering and their group and trying to figure out what the best approach is, and is it going to be another 10 years?
You know, so two things. First, we're being intentionally cautious about the conversation because we don't want to, this falls into a negotiating thing at some stage, and we don't want to infringe on those protocols and unfair labor practice or any discussion that's inappropriate. So, but in the other pieces, we don't want folks to feel like I'm here to lose my insurance. That's not the case either. So we don't want that kind of, and sometimes when people hear this conversation, they start to interpret these extreme things, and that's unhealthy. So we want to make sure that, understand, this is a healthy conversation. Yes, we have urgency, and you're absolutely right. There are some things on the forecast that make this even more urgent for us. There's a committee that's being put together that's going to be very aggressive in terms of vetting this out and getting some bids and some opinions and some. It'll have the right people on it, so that it can be somewhat efficient in its mobility, and very thorough. Because we can't kick this can down the road. The roost it's here, so we're going to have to really deal with this, and we can't deal with this in a vacuum. There are all kind of parties that have to be an integral part of the conversation, because ultimately, with health insurance, it's a trust piece, and people have to trust in what they're getting, and trust that they're not getting railroaded in any direction. So I think with respect to all parties involved, the union, the employees, the board, the folks who are both on the trust and on the board, there's a lot of moving parts. So
Just for clarification,
Mhm.
Mr. President, the trust has what's known as stop-loss insurance. The individuals have no insurance. They are their own insurance company. There is no insurance policy. I think we use Medical Mutual as our third-party administrator, which allows, I'm going to assume that employees carry Medical Mutual cards. That's what you show at the doctor in the hospital. But Medical Mutual isn't going to pay those claims. The trust is. With an insurance company policy, you pay the premium, and that's all you pay. It's going up. I mean, look what's happening with Obamacare premium. So you know, when I came in the insurance business in 1968, a semi-private room at St. Joseph Hospital was $35 a day. Today it's more like $3,500 or something. So be careful. I mean, the people are at risk. You don't have an insurance policy. And maybe we ought to look into getting one.
And if I could just kind of wrap this up a little bit.
Tighten it up.
And I appreciate Mr. Williams' comments. In no way, shape, or form are we intending to direct bargain with anybody. I think we're acknowledging, I'll speak just for me, that again, the healthcare trust is the healthcare plan for every district employee that has healthcare. I believe that on our current trajectory, it is not sustainable long-term. And actually, I'm not sure it's sustainable short-term. So we have to come up with some stopgap measures to make sure we need a short-term plan to get us to a long-term solution. Again, we will talk about things, the long-term solution in an appropriate manner, and when the time is right, we'll share it with all those members of the Health Trust. So again, the whole idea of tonight was to acknowledge that we have an issue that we plan to address.
And it is our issue. It's not their issue or their issue, it's our issue.
Everybody's.
Yes. Mr. Ballard, please, because I think, you know, again, this thing had gotten kicked around, and we who've been fatigued with it didn't, so we appreciate the urgency that you brought to it. Any comments on our thoughts around it?
I really don't have any comments. I just appreciate the fact that now we can really go out and vet this system and make sure we've got the best thing for 2017 with the health insurance. And I think it's been a long time coming for us to take a look at this. And I'm excited that we jumped right into that. I came on, that was one of the things when I first came to this board that I thought was very important for us to do. And a year later, here we are. Here we are.
Any other comments before we?
Do we have a executive session?
Yes.
No, nothing to work on that, please. Negotiations.
So at this time, that really concludes the business for the evening. Thank you all for being here. Our next board meeting is when? Oh, wait a minute. Was there a second hearing of the public? I thought I saw somebody who came in. No, I didn't. Next meeting.
The next scheduled is the 19th.
So our next scheduled board meeting is June the 19th. If there's any change in that, we will.
Have you made a final decision as to where graduation ceremonies are taking?
Plan A is at Stadium. Right now, we're looking at Plan A.
Well,
Is that last time?
channel says 60% rain and.
Last I saw, it was 20%
In the
at 9
daytime,
o'clock.
in the daytime.
Yeah, but I think 20% from, it's supposed to be fine during graduation time and 20% later on in the year.
60.
But we're all set up in the gym if you walk by, so.
60.
What time are we meeting, Jim?
For the graduation?
Yes, sir.
I don't attend them.
Oh.
I'm too old.
Oh,
It wears me out, so.
2%.
10%.
I just want one real,
Yes.
how thrilled were you, Mr. Steve Sturgill, to hear our band at the Palace? I could not believe the quality. I swear that when they played Stars and Stripes Forever, I saw John Philip Sousa's ghost walking across the stage.
They were classmates.
They were just, yes, we were. That was so fantastic. I wish all of you could have heard them. They played the national anthem and they played Stars. It was just magnificent. Thank you.
Congratulations to us.
No, not you.
Us. Us. It's all
The
us.
band, you're not in the band.
It's us, man. It's us. That band is ours. That's us.
Okay.
Any other comments, gentlemen? So our next meeting scheduled is June 19th, right here at 6:30 p.m. If there are any changes, we will make sure there's the appropriate notification. And again, thank you, Mr. Richardson, for coming and joining us at this meeting. Right now, I need a motion to go into executive session. Item D, negotiations.
Oh, I don't care.
You asking me?
I don't know if you need to wait. There's no downside to it. Yeah,
What's that? I'm sorry. What was
you want to invite Tony to our executive session?
Oh, that's fine, yeah. We can invite anybody who will. Join us. Yes. So there is a motion. I need a motion to go into executive session for item D, negotiations.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah?
Mr. Sturgill?
Yes.
Mr. Ballard?
Yes.
Mr. Demakia?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. And we will have our executive session right here. We will not return for any decision making, so we appreciate your attendance. Now get out.
Scoot. Move it.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools TV 20 WLCS.